Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to be here and be joined by our partners at AWS today for this opportunity to share non-infrastructure impacting best practices for optimizing your AWS costs with a special focus on startups. I'm Jeff Haynes. I'm part of the go-to-market team here at Archera. I'm going to be joining you along the journey today as we learn cost management strategies from experts from AWS and Archera. Getting started, first, I'd like to introduce Andrew Brown, Account Manager, Generative AI Startups at Amazon Web Services. Andrew, would you like to say a couple words?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name's Andrew. I've been an account manager at AWS for 3 years, working exclusively with startups, helping them go from inception to IPO. And I think just to give some context for the webinar and why we've partnered with Archera, one of the most common challenges I hear from founders is how can we better manage and understand AWS costs as we scale? And that's challenging for a company that's focused on so many different things, is growing quickly. And so I've partnered with Archera for about 2 years now in helping my customers optimize their costs. And they've been a phenomenal partner. They've helped hundreds of startups that I work with. And so I'm really excited for today's session. After this session, I encourage you all to meet with your AWS account team and Archera to discuss next steps. But yeah, I will be monitoring the chat for any questions you have related to AWS, and excited to kick things off, Jeff. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Now I'd like to introduce our main presenter, Sarah Husseini, Vice President of Customer Success at Archera. I'm going to give a little background. Sarah is a cloud cost optimization expert with over a decade of FinOps experience. Previously, she served in IT leadership roles at Thermo Fisher Scientific, then as a FinOps consultant and in account management positions at Cloudability. And then since 2022, she's led the customer success and FinOps consultancy here at Archera. Sarah has extensive experience guiding startups along their AWS cost management journeys, especially in the Gen AI and healthcare and life sciences verticals. And I'm so excited to learn from her alongside you today. So Sarah, are you ready to take it away?
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Jeff. There's going to be multiple phases involved in effectively optimizing your costs as a startup. So phase one is kind of the starting point where your foundation is really important for your ongoing success in the cloud. And so one thing that I always encourage my clients and anyone I know joining the cloud is implement good tagging hygiene. Doing this to start will really give you in the future the visibility you need into your infrastructure to be able to make the effective decisions that you need to make around, different types of optimization strategies. Even outside of cost optimization strategies, it'll even just give you really good visibility into decision making operationally in general. The next, thing that I always tell people is, questions to ask yourself before you even go into, this phase, right? What will this infrastructure be used for? So this is going to be really important because you can effectively name or tag the infrastructure related to what it's going to be used and purpose for. I.e., is this going to be a production environment? Is it going to be used for staging, development? So these can really be good to include in the name. And then the other one is who will be responsible for managing this infrastructure? This can really help with just, infrastructure ownership. Is this going to be something that's DevOps? Is it going to be something that's, R&D, for example? This will help you at a later stage when you need to go in and make decisions that could optimize your spend to ensure you have the appropriate stakeholders. And also, what it's being used for. The reason this is important is because, something that may be revenue impacting, you want to treat it with a special type of care. It's not like it's okay if it goes away, right? Like there are customers possibly using it and things like this. So the next thing that I always suggest outside of tagging is implement storage policies. And the reason I say that is because creating storage life cycles and constantly deleting unattached volumes and creating a policy of, well, how many days do we need to keep these unattached volumes? are important because unattached volumes are actually one of the costs, like the sunk costs that we see people incurring for many months. And it's something that if they had an effective policy around this, right, they would not have to carry something for many years that's not even being touched for storage. And it can really add up in the costs. So going into, we discussed some things around tagging, and there are some tools that you can use, but the ones that I've used personally for tagging hygiene are, Tag Editor, AWS, it's an AWS native solution, as well as resource group tagging if you want to do bulk. But there are also policies that you can implement, which are really good, and there are several in the marketplace, but that'll allow you to put policies in place where you cannot launch an instance if it doesn't have a tag. It'll get rejected. So it will require some level of tagging, and this can really be a good preventative measure to ensure that the tags are enforced. But there is a human element to ensure that it's a quality tag. And not just like a 1, 2, 3, 4 type of thing. But yeah, that's kind of where I would suggest starting for your foundation. So now moving into phase 2, say you're in the cloud, your infrastructure is there, it's running. The next things you'll want to consider first are, some questions to ask yourself, like, do I have capacity to make infrastructure changes? Do we know what we will be using in the next coming year? The reason this is important is there are often times where, especially if you're in a migration situation from on-prem to cloud, that infrastructure can be brought into the cloud over provisioned. And, it's better. I mean, people find it better because they don't want to risk not having enough capacity. And then there's, impact to your business. So this is not uncommon at all. And there is some good reasoning behind it. But what we always suggest is once you've brought that into the cloud, monitor your infrastructure utilization. And when monitoring this, there are, again, various different tools you can use, from native tooling to other partners. But monitoring the utilization is important to see if there's CPU and memory and disk and network that is just, your usage is here, and then there's just like this much more left, right? You'll want to consider what's called right sizing. And so with right sizing, this allows you to basically take the infrastructure you're currently using today and reduce it down to a smaller size that is matching the demand of your usage. So it's basically a supply and demand equilibrium that you're looking for. Once you've done that, the next step that, AWS and other FinOps people always suggest are, now that you're on the size that you think you're going to be on, move as much as you can from on-demand to reserved pricing. So AWS will actually allow you to get a discounted rate if you're able to commit to a certain period of time and spend. So with AWS native tooling, the minimum commitment is 1 year, and the longest commitment is 3 years. So, Archera, there are other offerings with partners like Archera, for example. We do offer a 30-day variant of this as well. And we'll dive into that more in future slides. But essentially, the shorter term commitments can really give you the flexibility to kind of put this reserved instance pricing step in front of the right sizing step. And the reason being is if you have a 30-day commitment in place, you can start saving immediately. And then after that initial 30-day lock, you can go ahead and right size that infrastructure. Because as many people may know, or if you don't know, right sizing does require taking your instance offline for a period of time. And so that can cause an outage to the business. So a lot of times people have to plan, when is the right time for me to be able to do this? And so it may not be able to happen immediately. It may be many months. So that's why having the option with partners like Archera to do a 30-day guaranteed reserved instance or guaranteed savings plan will allow you to actually do this reserved pricing step first and then let you do the right sizing. So moving into the next stage of things, phase 3 is what we call maintain and plan long-term. So once you have those commitments in place, you want to monitor the reserved instance utilization. And some questions to ask yourself when doing that are going to be what upcoming infrastructure changes will be needed to support the business. Will you be needing to make changes to your infrastructure in the next 30 days? And so these questions will help you decide if you need to release certain commitments or let them live on and continue to do what they're doing. Outside of that, you also want to ensure with monitoring your reserved instance utilization that you're also monitoring any upcoming expirations to those commitments, because in some cases, people will just be busy supporting the business and they forget that they have commitments that are going to be expiring and they'll fall off and then they revert back to on-demand pricing and the next month comes and they're like, oh my God, why did my bill go up 30%? And it's because they had reservations that expired. So there are different tools that we recommend. Archera has what we call a renewal plan. So you can, as early as you want, assess, okay, I'm going to be continuing to use this reservation. You'll just go in, create a renewal plan. On the day that that reservation is set to expire, the plan will go ahead and reenact a new one on that day so you don't lose any coverage. There are also other tools that you can use when monitoring reserved instance utilization. And one is what we have with Archera is, those 30-day commitments give you excellent flexibility. If you need to make changes to your infrastructure, shut things down, right size, whatever it may be, we do have policies that you can optionally opt into that will monitor the RI utilization based on the savings thresholds that you put in place. If the savings drop below any threshold you put in place, the tool will actually go ahead and release that commitment. That way, you're not carrying anything that's not being utilized. You also have the option to do this manually, but if you want some tooling to support you, it definitely is there. And then the last is always track your forecasted spend. Make sure that you don't have certain things creeping up that you can proactively maybe apply commitments to, or even if you're at a larger state, growing into a larger state of spend, assessing if maybe something like an EDP or a PPA would be appropriate. And then Archera also does have a forecasting tool that can help support you with that planning as well. In addition to forecasting spend, if you're planning a migration, for example, you can track the migration progress there. You can also track credit burn downs, for example. So if you have any credit programs you're utilizing, you can definitely track the life cycle there. And you can also use the RIs to extend that credit life cycle as well, because with reducing your spend, then those credits will be stretched a bit further. All right. Next, let's go into our demonstration. Bear with me 1 minute. How are we doing on time, Jeff?
We are about 17 minutes in, so I think you want to go on for 10 or even a little bit longer minutes, we're fine, but this is great content.
Great, awesome. So right now I'm logging into the Archera console. This is our demo account. And as you can see here, this is going to be the home page. What you're going to see when you initially log in is going to be your immediate savings analysis. So we connect to your CUR. It's an agentless system. You don't have to worry about anything running on your infrastructure or anything like that. And so what we're doing is we're monitoring your cost, your usage, and we are then, based on the uptime that we're seeing and the eligible services, we're recommending different savings options to you. So out of the box, we have, right now, it looks like the immediate savings analysis is presenting to us the Archera recommended plan. And so with that, we can see there's opportunity to save 1.94K additional monthly. So we can come here and actually click Explore More Commitment Plans. And this is going to bring us to the Commitment Planner, where we'll have options to see all the different plans. So out of the box, Archera offers 3 different plans. The plan on the left is the recommended plan that we just discussed. The recommended plan is going to be covering your EC2 and compute on-demand usage only, and it's going to be utilizing Archera's 30-day GRIs. And so a few things to call out here. You can see that there's $0 in upfront spend required to achieve these savings. We also have a break-even period here. So we're gonna see a break-even of 18 days. And essentially what that's telling us is as long as you don't make infrastructure changes for the next 18 days, this plan will be more savings advantageous than running on demand. And then moving into the balance plan. So the balance plan, we can see the savings are a little bit higher, and that's because it's actually looking at not just EC2 and compute, but all services that AWS allows a reservation for. So that's going to be covering things like EC2, RDS, Elasticache, OpenSearch, and so on. And so if we were to come here and click View Details, we can get very specific about what services are going to be covered here and specifically what infrastructure. So starting here at the top, we can see that in this plan, it's covering Elasticache and EC2. And we can see the savings for each individual service. Outside of that, we can see the minimum commit. So as we discussed earlier in the presentation, the way these savings are incurred are because we're telling AWS we're going to commit to certain dollars for a period of time, and then we get savings in return. So in this case, we are telling AWS, okay, I'm going to commit to 3.39K of spend for the next 30 days, and in return, give me 2.04K of savings. So if we scroll down here to the middle of the page, we can actually see the different contracts. Let me zoom in a little bit. The different contracts that are going to be covered in this plan. So we can see it's giving a recommendation for M5 larges in the US East 1 region, a count of 77 units. Next is M6A large, we see 19 units, cache R5X large, and an M6I large. And so we're going to scroll down here and we're going to start looking and we can see the different instances that will be covered here. So we can see these 4 contracts will be covering about 1,700 different instances. So I want to give you guys an example of why tagging is important. So you can see here for this Amazon Elasticache, right? We can see here that it's for Redis production. And so that's going to be great because you can say, okay, I know what that's for. And then scrolling up, once you've done the review, hopefully you understand what you're seeing, what infrastructure that is, and have some insights into what the future plans may be. And so then once you're done reviewing, if you're ready to go ahead and action this plan, you would scroll up to the top and just simply click apply this plan. And then it's going to present this to you and say, basically, are you sure you want to action $2,000 a month in savings? You'll just click confirm and then it'll get applied and you'll start saving money instantly. Sorry, not instantly, usually within 24 hours. But that's kind of the way of the land with these plans. This is a straightforward scenario. You know, if you're, for example, having different strategies for different types of infrastructure, this is when the tagging is really important because with Archera, you can create views, and with views, you can make those views off of accounts or tags or any other data that you have. It could be off infrastructure ID. And so what we can do is if you have different tagging strategies for different infrastructure types, we can create views and we can commit accordingly. So if we go back a step, we just went through a 30-day commitment option. We also do have options for 1-year commitment. And we call this is our high savings plan. So the high savings plan, you can see these are going to be 1-year guaranteed reserved instances. Occasionally you'll see some 1-year native reservations in here as well. And we can see there's $0 upfront spend here. In some cases, if there's like a native reservation, for example, or if it's going to maximize the savings, there may be an option in this high savings plan only to do an upfront or a partial upfront payment, but not required. That's up to you. So if we come in and we view the details, we can just take a look here at a few things. So one thing I always like to point out, you can make edits to any of these line items. So for example, we can see everything in this plan is a 1 year, but let's say maybe you know that this second line item, you can't commit to maybe for 1 year, and it needs to be a 30-day commitment. So with that plan, you can actually go in and make it a 30-day. So you can see it brought up a matrix here. It's selected at the 1-year GRI, but you'll have the option to also select a 30-day. It'll slightly bring down the savings a little bit, but it will be reflected in the plan. The other thing I wanted to call out here, and let me see if I can scroll in. So with the 1-year GRIs for non-RDS infrastructure, Archera can actually get higher savings in most cases for customers than 1-year native RIs. And you can see that here. So you can see the 1-year Archera GRI, in this case, the savings are $484.37. With the 1-year AWS native RI, we're looking at about $400.14. So we can see that it's about $84 in savings that are higher with the 1-year Archera GRI. Another thing that I like to look at, a lot of people think when it comes to commitments that the most flexible with native tooling is the 1-year AWS convertible RI, because you can have an RI, but you also have the option to convert things if needed. But if you look down here at the savings, the 1-year AWS convertible RI, the savings are $313.55 for that 1-year commitment. If we compare it to the 30-day GRI, the 30-day GRI has higher savings, not huge, but about $9 more a month. So we can see 27% savings rate, and that's an 11-month lower commitment. You don't have to worry about converting anytime you make a change. You can simply just give it back and not have to deal with it anymore. You can do whatever needed to the commitment, whether it be completely terminate it or move it to a different infrastructure type and reapply the commitment to what is now relevant to that infrastructure. And then outside of guaranteed reserved instances, we also have our guaranteed savings plan. So it's similar to the AWS compute savings plan, where rather than committing to certain infrastructure types, like an M5, for example, or a C5, whatever it may be, you would just actually at the account level say, for this account, I'm going to be spending X amount of dollars an hour overall. And so if that's what you'd rather do, similar thing applies there for the 1-year guaranteed savings plans. So we can see here that the 1-year guaranteed savings plan is actually a bit higher, about $120 higher a month than the 1-year AWS compute savings plan. So significant higher savings there as well if you want to do a longer term commitment. And then in addition, actually, I'll just show you while I'm in here, in addition to being able to edit the commitment type, you can also edit the quantity type. So if maybe some infrastructure is going away, you have the flexibility to just reduce this by however many you want and go ahead and save that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move on now to showing you how you can give back a commitment if it's not needed anymore. So if you go into the commitment inventory page, this is where you're going to monitor all RI performance. We have a lot of infrastructure in here, so it may take a second to load, but you can see here, there's a lot of various RIs, looks like almost 300. So let's just maximize this out. And you can see here, there's a few different statuses. So there's one that says expiring. This is notifying you that something is expiring. And then you can come here to the expires column and see, oh, this one expires in like 5 days. And then you can go in and you can also see there's another status that says reselling. So this one's already been turned on. The reselling's already been turned on for this one. It looks like the utilization has gone down. So we're selling that one off because it's a 30-day commitment and it's unlocked. And we can see here, the age of that is 320 days. So I'm going to sort here to see if I can find us one that's not in a reselling state, but we're pretty usually on top of this, so may not be there, unfortunately. Give me a second. Here we go. Here's an example. So we can see this commitment here is past the 30-day lock. It's about 632 days old. And it has a status of unlocked, which means we can resell this instance, this reserved instance, if it's not needed anymore. We can see the savings are green and still saving us money, but hypothetically, if you wanted to, you just click resell. It's going to ask you to confirm that you would like to do that. It's going to let you know it can take up to 5 business days to fully process. In this case, the RI is saving the customer money, or us money. This is our demo account. And so it's giving you a warning to tell you, hey, if you resell this commitment, your bill will go up because your savings are going away. But in the case that your savings are no longer in place, you won't see this warning. We'd actually recommend you to sell it back, and you would just click submit, and then that would go into a reselling state. So last thing I wanted to go through on today's call in terms of demonstration is our forecasting capabilities. So with Archera, you can create several forecasts. I'll go here, create new forecast, and we can kind of build one out here together. So we'll want to give it a name. So maybe let's just call this webinar sample. You can select a start date, and it can start in the future. It can start a little bit back. So maybe let's just say July 1st. Sorry, I meant to say August 1st. Yeah. And then you can select the duration. So you can forecast it out as low as 6 months or up to 6 years. So let's do a 1-year forecast in this case. And then you'll have the option to select all of your AWS resources, or if you want to be focused on specific, maybe cost centers or certain infrastructure type, maybe you're focusing on a project and you want to say, what is this project going to be costing me? And you have tags around that. We can create a view, call it that project name, cost center name, whatever it may be, and then you would apply it here as a segment. So there's, in our case, we have several different views, but I'll just create it for all of our resources for the sake of this example. And then we'll go back to the look back period. It'll be anywhere from a 3-month look back to a 12-month. So I'm just going to do a 3-month so we can see the most recent. And then lastly, you'll want to choose the algorithm if you want it to be an average or linear. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it as an average. We'll click submit. And you can see here as well, while this is loading, this graph is going to start giving you a preview into what your forecast may look like. And here it is, our webinar sample. So we can click in and it's going to open up the forecast for us. And we can see over the next few months what that forecast is going to be. These different colors within the bar actually signifying different services. If we scroll down into this, detailed section, we can get insights into the different services that are going to be, spent. And then in addition to that, you also have the option to say, what would my forecast look like if I were to apply one of these plans that Archera has recommended to me? So for example, if you wanted to apply that recommended plan, this will actually reduce the forecast there. In addition, if you guys are negotiating in EDP, you can actually input your EDP data here. Things like start date, end date, what your minimum spend is, and what your discount rate will be. And then outside of that, you can also do things like credit tracking and credit burn down. So for example, if you were given any credits through a program, you can just add those credits here. Maybe it's something like MAP credits for your migration. You put the start date, the end date, the amount, and then you submit it. And then it can basically track you, show you the tracking. And you can come here and say display options. You can say apply credit. So we can see, okay, in that first month is really when my credits will get wiped out, but it won't go beyond that. Or instead of saying apply credits, you can say view burn down, and it's gonna show you a graph. But I think my value was not high enough. So let's make it a little more impactful. And then we can see when the burn down happened. So it looks like, mid-July of 2025 is when we'd start to run out of those credits in this scenario with that burn down. You can also share the forecast out if needed via a link. In addition to that, you can actually export this to a CSV as well if you're going to be doing any more in-depth modeling.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time to walk everybody through a little bit of the Archera platform and for all those great upfront tips for startups. And then Sarah gave some great examples of how startups can start saving with Archera's free platform. You can install Archera in about 5 minutes. So simply go to archera.ai/AWS-start or just follow that QR code on screen. We'll also send the link in the follow-up. You'll be asked to include your master AWS ID so we can include your AWS success team. And then you'll get an email with setup instructions, and Archera can be installed in about 5 minutes. And then we'll reach out to you to schedule a savings analysis where we go through all of your current opportunities and help you understand the platform. And if you're not quite ready to install, you can also request a demo at archera.ai/demo. And our team will connect with you to show you, directly how we might be able to work with you. So, Sarah, you mentioned tagging. Do you have any best practices you could recommend for tagging? Or additionally getting developers to tag resources?
Yeah, there are various different third-party solutions that can actually really hard enforce tagging. I definitely recommend implementing that strategy, and basically it won't let you launch an instance without putting those tags in that are required. So you can actually define for an organization, right? An organization may define and say, our tagging strategy are we need the following 5 tags on every instance. And then you can hard code those tag keys into your launch process. And basically, if it doesn't have values for all of those tags, then the instance won't be able to be launched. So that's definitely a process that I recommend implementing.
Awesome. Next up, we have a question. I think it's about pricing. How is Archera priced? Is it a percentage of spend or savings? I don't know if it was covered in the presentation.
So if you're not saving, we're not charging anything. And that can really vary depending on the commitment period, as well as like the instance type.
Got it. And then, so we heard the rules for RIs, reserved instances, were changing. Can we still get savings using reserved instances?
Yes, you can. We don't leverage RI arbitrage. And so because of that, we're still able to offer RIs with our solution today, being that you get to own these reservations. We also aren't doing volume discount RIs as well. So those volume discounted RIs are really what are being prohibited today, and that doesn't apply to our strategy.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions we have. So in closing, thank you so much to Andrew Brown and Amazon Web Services for arranging this training today. Thanks to Sarah Husseini for sharing her expertise. I hope everybody got a lot out of the session. I'm sure you did, because I did as well. And I know this stuff pretty well. Feel free to reach out to anyone at Archera with any additional questions or to your AWS account representative. With that, thank you all for your time, and please have a wonderful rest of your day.